You know how they say truckers see the weirdest stuff on the road? I used to think it was just tall tales to pass the time during long hauls. That was before I started driving myself and stumbled into something I'll never be able to forget. It started on a lonely stretch of Highway 191, cutting through the Utah desert. Midnight had come and gone, and the moon cast long shadows over the jagged rocks. I was hauling a full load of canned goods, my destination a warehouse outside of Phoenix. The company didn't pay me to stop, so I had one rule: keep the wheels turning. I'd been driving for 6 hours straight when I saw it. Red taillights blinking up ahead. A pickup truck was parked on the shoulder, hazards flashing in the pitch-black night. Normally, I wouldn't stop. Too many stories about drivers getting jumped or worse. But something about the scene didn't sit right. There was no movement, no silhouette of a person waving for help. Just those lights blinking like a heartbeat. I slowed to a crawl, scanning the truck as I passed. The driver's side door was wide open. A pair of boots sat neatly on the ground beside the truck, toes pointing outward. No sign of the driver. No luggage. Nothing. I told myself to keep going, but a few miles down the road, a feeling clawed at the back of my mind. What if someone was hurt out there? I couldn't just leave them stranded. Against my better judgment, I pulled over and grabbed my flashlight. I stepped out of my rig, the cool desert air biting at my skin. Everything was eerily quiet, except for the soft hum of my truck's engine. My flashlight sliced through the darkness as I walked back toward the pickup. The boots were still there, perfectly placed as though someone had set them down with care. I shined the light inside the truck. The cab was empty, spotless even, no trash, no keys in the ignition, no phone charging on the dash. Just a single Polaroid photo tucked into the sun visor. I hesitated but reached for it. The image showed a man in his late 30s, smiling awkwardly in front of what looked like a family camper. His face was familiar in a vague, déjà vu kind of way, but I couldn't place him. Scrawled across the bottom of the photo in faded ink were the words, "They follow." My stomach tightened. I turned and aimed the flashlight at the ground, scanning for footprints. There were none. Not in the loose dirt, not in the gravel shoulder. It was as if the boots had been dropped from the sky. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. That's when I noticed it. A faint sound, so subtle I thought I'd imagined it at first. Like breathing, but not quite. A low, rhythmic hiss coming from somewhere behind me. I spun around, the beam of my flashlight darting wildly across the road. There was nothing, just the empty highway stretching into oblivion. The sound had stopped, but my heart was pounding, and I suddenly felt exposed, like I was being watched. I decided I'd seen enough. My instinct screamed at me to leave, and I wasn't about to argue. I turned back toward my truck, quickening my pace. When the hiss returned, closer this time, I froze. The sound was coming from directly behind me. Every fiber of my being told me not to turn around, but curiosity, no fear, forced my hand. I slowly pivoted, my flashlight trembling in my grip. At first, I saw nothing but empty road and blackness. Then, just beyond the edge of the flashlight's reach, something moved. A shadow, low to the ground, slithering across the asphalt. My flashlight flicked upward, catching a brief glimpse of a figure crouched on all fours. It was human but not. Its limbs were too long, bending unnaturally, its head tilted as if studying me. The thing's eyes reflected the light like an animal's. Two glowing orbs that locked onto mine. "Who's there?" I managed to stammer, my voice cracking. The thing didn't answer. Instead, it crawled closer, its movements jerky and insect-like. My legs screamed for me to run, but I couldn't move. My body was locked in place as the thing rose to its full height, towering over me. Then it spoke. Its voice was low and gravelly, like gravel being ground under a tire. "You followed them too." I didn't have time to ask what it meant before the thing lunged. My survival instincts kicked in, and I bolted toward my truck, legs pumping harder than they ever had. I could hear it behind me, its steps uneven but fast, too fast. I reached my truck and threw myself into the cab, slamming the door shut and locking it in one frantic motion. My hands fumbled for the ignition, but my truck wouldn't start. No, no, no! I screamed, pounding the steering wheel. Outside, the creature stood in the middle of the road, staring at me, his head tilted to one side, almost curious. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, it retreated, loping back toward the abandoned pickup. It crouched beside the boots, its long fingers tracing the leather with what looked like reverence. My truck roared to life, and I didn't wait to see what it would do next. I slammed the gas pedal, tires screeching as I peeled away. I drove like a maniac, the high beams cutting through the emptiness of the desert highway. My hands shook as I gripped the wheel, glancing nervously in the mirrors. My mind was racing. What had I just seen? After about 10 miles, my heart rate started to settle, though every shadow along the roadside seemed to twist into shapes that weren't there. I convinced myself I was in the clear. Whatever that thing was, it had stayed back with the pickup. Then I noticed the smell. It started faint, an acrid metallic scent that wafted through the vents. At first, I thought it was something burning under the hood, but as it grew stronger, filling the cab, I realized it smelled like rust. No blood. I gagged and cranked the windows down, letting the cool desert air rush in. That's when I saw it. The Polaroid. It was lying on the passenger seat. I knew I'd left it behind in the pickup. My stomach dropped as I picked it up, hoping my eyes were playing tricks on me. But it was different now. The same man stood in the frame, but his face wasn't smiling anymore. His mouth hung slack, eyes wide with terror. Behind him, barely visible in the shadows, was the thing I'd seen crouching in the road. My truck's headlights flickered, and the engine sputtered. No, no, no! I yelled, slamming the dashboard. The lights went out entirely, plunging me into darkness as the truck coasted to a stop. The only sound was the wind howling outside. I reached for my phone, fumbling to turn on the flashlight, but before I could, the cab filled with that same hiss from earlier. This time, it came from all around me. Something heavy slammed against the side of the truck, hard enough to rock the cab. Then again, on the other side, I could hear scratching, long, deliberate drags of claws across metal. In a panic, I grabbed the tire iron I kept under the seat and yanked the door open, stepping into the night. My flashlight darted over the highway, the empty desert beyond, but nothing was there. The noises stopped. Then, just on the edge of my vision, I saw them. Figures. Dozens of them, crouched low and moving toward me. Their glowing eyes blinked in unison, reflecting the moonlight like animal predators. I clambered back into the cab, slamming the door and locking it again. The truck's engine was dead, but I didn't care. I wasn't leaving this cab. The figures encircled me, their movements jerky and inhuman. One of them stood taller than the rest, stepping closer to the windshield. Its face was obscured, but I could feel its eyes boring into me. It raised a long, bony hand and pointed toward the road ahead. Then, it spoke in that same gravelly voice, "Keep driving." My hands trembled as I sat frozen in the cab. The figure outside didn't move, its outstretched finger pointing toward the road like a grim directive. The others circled the truck, their glowing eyes fixed on me, unblinking. My mind raced. My truck was dead, surrounded, and there was no way out. Yet that voice, it was a command, not a threat. Keep driving. Desperate, I turned the key again, silently praying. The engine coughed, sputtered, and roared to life. The figures froze, their heads snapping toward the truck. For a moment, everything felt suspended, as if time itself had hesitated. I slammed the gas pedal, and the truck lurched forward. The headlights blazed, cutting through the figures as they scattered into the darkness. I felt the tires bump over something. A log, I told myself, not daring to look in the mirrors. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, a narrow line between the desolation on either side. The smell of blood faded, replaced by the cold, clean bite of the desert air streaming through the windows. I kept my eyes forward, refusing to look into the night. But the figures didn't leave me. Every so often, I caught glimpses of them on the periphery. Just beyond the reach of the headlights, shapes moved, keeping pace with the truck. Their eyes glinted like embers, appearing and vanishing as I sped through the night. Then, far in the distance, I saw it. A single light blinking in the darkness. A gas station. Civilization. Hope. I gunned it, the truck roaring as it hurtled toward the light. My chest tightened as I closed the distance, expecting the figures to stop me, to block the road. But they didn't. They just watched, their glowing eyes receding into the shadows. I screeched into the station, slamming on the brakes and parking under the floodlights. For the first time, I felt safe. The clerk inside stared at me as I stumbled through the door, disheveled and pale. "You okay, buddy?" he asked, eyeing me warily. I wanted to tell him everything, but where would I even begin? Instead, I muttered something about a breakdown and asked for coffee. As he poured, I glanced outside. The highway was empty. I stayed in that gas station until sunrise, not daring to return to the truck until the sun was high in the sky. When I finally stepped out, the desert seemed ordinary again, harmless. But as I climbed into my rig, I froze. Sitting on the dashboard where the Polaroid had been was a new photo. It showed me, sitting in the cab, my face pale with terror. And behind me, barely visible in the darkened sleeper compartment, were two glowing eyes. I don't drive that route anymore. Hell, I barely drive at night. I don't know what I saw out there, and I'm not sure I want to know. But if you're ever out on Highway 191, and you see an abandoned truck with its hazards on, keep driving.